My colleagues are ready to go for our discussions on right here. As I stated at the beginning of the show, today is World Water Day, and as part of the SDG goal, very important, it says ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So that means that everybody needs to have. As a matter of fact, it's a must that every living being on this earth gets access to potable water. And today is that day where most conversations around the world would be focused on the distribution of water, accessibility, challenges that some regions are faced with in terms of water, as well as how we are doing, what are the efforts we are putting in place to also conserve water, because in as much as we are waiting the consumers to be fed, to be given access to water, how do we also manage these things? However, we will be speaking to Sarpong Hammond Antwi all the way in Ireland. He's from our base, Ghana. He is in the diaspora in the Republic of Ireland with Dundalk Institute of Technology, and he's a PhD student. He has dedicated his time and efforts in finding out issues, problems faced in Africa with issues of water. And this is actually amazing. We get to find out what are some of the things they've found during their research, and do we have a hope? Yeah, especially for some places that actually have limited supply of water. And Sarpong Hammond Antwi has just joined us on the line. Chief, good afternoon and welcome to the Africa Daily Show.
Good afternoon, Barry. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to always be given the chance to speak to you and to your audience.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a pleasure. What's the time there, by the way? Is it the same time? Are we sharing the same time zone?
Yes, we're sharing the same time zone. So sometime next month we might be leading.
Oh, okay.
With an hour difference.
Right, changing, weather issues and what have you, I believe. Right. Anyway, let me first of all congratulate you on your journey. I mean, your efforts in finding out, some of the challenges that some African regions are faced with when it comes to water. But first of all, your research with Dundalk Institute of Technology, which you are a part of, tell us about what you found in terms of the challenges of water in Africa.
Okay, thank you again for having me. So I would like to first of all say that issues relating to water are quite complex, and I'm not sure we can use the time we have on the show today to even talk about it. But in brevity, what I've been doing with my PhD is looking at management and governance of water resources. And I'm looking at the European perspective and a little bit of Africa.
Okay.
So currently, I'm focusing on the African perspective, and the reason why there's more interest in the African side of things has to do with COVID-related challenges and how miraculously African governments have been able to pull strings together, because prior to COVID, everyone thought Africa would never make it. But if you look at the utility sector, i.e. energy and water, you realize that, I don't know where the magic is coming from, but you realize that the stories have turned. Yes, the scenarios have turned. So it has become a matter of interest to every stakeholder, and that is what primarily I'm finding out now.
So far, what are some of the, because clearly some regions, some settings in Africa are faced with serious water challenges. What are some of the reasons that your research, revealed?
Well, as I indicated earlier on, water problems in Africa are many and they are complex. So it includes climate and runoff variabilities, water scarcity driven by population growth and pressure, and then rising standard of living, as well as increasing water supply costs as accessibility, especially in urban areas, is becoming a problem. And this overall is linked to poverty and to a greater extent conflict. So this complexity, as I've said, accompanied by rising population growth and then growing water scarcity, mainly in Africa. So for the purposes of our listeners, you don't need to be an expert to understand. So I want to break it down to natural and human factors so that anyone listening can really understand.
Can relate.
So if you look at some of the natural factors causing water challenges in Africa, we can talk about changes in the weather and rainfall pattern. So when I was young in Ashanti region, I think we used to have raining season twice in a year, and it was always intense. Sometimes you don't even go to school because it rains all day. But now the patterns are changing, and I believe our listeners will notice that sometimes it gets very hot and it rains for some few minutes, and other times it rains so much that we begin to have flooding in major parts of our cities and towns. So these are some of the natural factors relating to the water challenges we are having. And now we have the human factors. So some of the human factors are, of course, as we all know, governance and institutional arrangements in looking at water resources or water bodies are a challenge. And then pollution, environmental degradation, the illegal mining we are having, the throwing away of litter, plastic waste, and all this sort of liquid and solid waste are having effects on water resources, which are human factors. And then our lack of investment in the water sector. Because we have lots of, especially in Africa, because we have water resources, people can see water flowing. They don't think much about investing. They see it as a free gift of nature that is there for us forever. But that is not the case. So our failure to invest in the water sector is a human factor causing challenges in that sector. And I think that the last one has to do with demand and supply from the human perspective. So I'm going to give a quick example. If you live in a residential or estate area, you have drinkable water being used to wash cars, and then water lawns and flowers. And if you live in the town or the rural setting, you see that even the water you drink is what somebody will not use to even wash his car in the city. So because of these dynamics and growing population trend, there is disproportionate use of water. So at the end of the day, in cities, water is being wasted, whereas in rural and peri-urban areas, there is no access. So in brevity, these are two major differences causing our problem: the natural factors and the human factors. Thank you.
Very, very. Very interesting finding out some of these issues. I mean, you'd realize that the only thing one can actually align to water shortage sometimes is talking about there's no rainfall this year or low rainfall, one would say. But if you look deeper, per what you've said, these are very, very critical areas that I think we really need to take a second look at. But then let's talk about the matter of the day, COVID-19, which also requires us to use more water, in terms of adhering to the protocols and what have you. How has it impacted? How has COVID affected, the water sector in Africa? Is it that bad?
Well, I think COVID has exposed the challenges that we pretend previously that it didn't exist. So, for example, in Ghana, I was happy when our president announced that water and electricity was going to be free. So I was speaking with my supervisors, and I'm like, see, in my country, water is free, and everybody is amazed because nobody will ever think in an African country government could make even something free like water, which holds a high economic value in Europe
and elsewhere,
across parts of the world. Yes, so you find out that we have the capacity to do certain things that we didn't think of doing or were scared to do, but COVID gave us a push to do that. So that is on the positive side. But on the negative side, here again, to make it quite simple for our listeners, I'll divide Africa into four. So if you look at the first part of Africa, we have the desert and Sahelian regions where, because of the temperature rise and intensity of sun, water evaporates. So they have challenges with water. And then I'll look at the second part where people have so much water that they don't even know what to do with it, and then there is always flooding because they don't know how to even construct channels and make good use
to the right use. Right.
And we have the third part of Africa where water used to be in abundance, but now it's moving or is diminishing because there is excess investment in water. So I can talk about Ethiopia, Egypt, and Uganda, where now Ethiopia wants to build a dam, and that dam is going to cut short water supply. So, prior to the dam, water was accessible, but because of the dam, water access is diminishing. And then we have the other part of Africa where unexpectedly water is running low, like South Africa, where in 2018 and 19 they had major drought, and then in cities like Cape Town, taps were dried up. So that one became like out of the blue. Nobody was aware this was coming.
Yeah.
So if you divide Africa in this part, these are the challenges.
Right.
But what COVID did was that because governments were aware of these challenges, they were very fast in acting.
Okay.
Because we all know one of the criteria with COVID is to wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Yeah, regularly. Yeah, exactly.
So in countries like Libya, which is a war-torn country now, in places like Burkina Faso, in Sudan, South Sudan, and the Republic of Sudan, government, they were using water tankers to supply water to communities. In places in rural South Africa, special tanks were being sent to communities to supply water. So at the end of the day, prior to COVID, communities without water were now having access to water.
Okay.
And in Ghana, there were some places, even in Accra, in Waja, where there is a dam, but people had no water, and all of a sudden taps were flowing.
Yeah.
In other places, so COVID actually just pressed the button for us to really act. And then for places where they were misusing water, they now saw the need to make good use of water. So it's really difficult to say COVID has been very good for the water sector or very bad, but then it has been a middle trend. And for us as policy or researchers or even for listeners, what we need to now focus on is what advantage can we take out of the COVID vis-a-vis water issues.
Clearly it came along with its pros and cons and all of that. Right. So out of all of these challenges and goodness that it has also brought, talk about COVID and what have you, what has been done, by stakeholders, governments, institutions? What has been done at the moment to tackle some of these, challenges?
Yes, I think I'll start with stakeholders and stakeholders here. I'm not referring to only government, but you and I who use water every day. And then what we've been doing now is we've become conscious and aware of the need to save water. So you find out that even in homes where they have their own private wells and others, they don't misuse water like they used to previously. Everyone is becoming conscious of how water needs to be conserved or saved. So I think that is a primary role everybody's playing. Now, if you look at the government side of things, I think many countries in Africa now are making progress with making water access quite distributive to the larger population. So countries are beginning to build treatment plants in northern Africa where water is relatively scarce.
Exactly.
There's a lot of investment and research into reusing wastewater. So now you don't even throw water away. We reuse or we treat and reuse them again. And then even in terms of building and design, now we are looking at water harvesting, which is part of many building codes across Africa. And in the peak of the COVID pandemic, we found out that most governments were paying bills that they own utility companies so that these companies could increase their capacity to treat more water to supply. So I think in recent times, factors like human and natural factors, just as I spoke about, an increasing population growth is forcing government to act, and is forcing government to now pay attention to water supply and vis-a-vis scarcity. So everybody knows that now it's not easy to come by water. So if you have one drop, you make good use of it. And I think it relates to this year's World Water Day, which has to do with putting value on water or valuing water. So when we're kids, we used to stay 5 or 10, 15 minutes under shower. But now I'm sure if you stay more than 2 minutes, your mother begins to shout,
what are you doing? How long are you going to take? Exactly.
So these are all progressive steps. They are not major, but they are progressive steps. And I believe that days like this, when we talk about water, it will go a long way to trigger our water. We call it water wisdom, so that we know conserving and making reuse of water is the best way to go.
Nice. Let me not keep you long, but then are there, some water conservatives? I mean, at this point, do we see ourselves getting one at this point in time?
Yes, I think, as I indicated earlier, everyone is becoming conscious of the need to conserve water and make good use
So
of water.
we're looking at larger volume.
Yeah. There's this frightening statistics, and I think it'll be nice to share it too. So, women and girls spend over 200 million hours every day globally just looking for water. And so, as a result, these women and girls are denying education and other
Especially
equally important activities. Yes. So, you have NGOs now trumpeting the need for water to be accessible to women and girls, especially so that they don't have to struggle and waste productive time in search of
water, right?
And with climate crisis also coming up, I think countries are becoming conscious of the need to look at alternatives to water supply. So all of these are going to help. But specifically, I'll limit myself to this day and to encourage listeners that we all have a role to play when it comes to water. Government has a bigger role to play, but at our individual levels, in our homes,
also counts
in
as
our
well.
kitchens, we have a lot of roles we can play. So one of the key things we can do is to know when to turn on the tap, when to turn it off, when to use water, when not to use, how to treat water and drink, how not to treat water and drink, and what we use water for at each point in time. In our kitchens, in our washrooms, in washing our cars, in watering flowers and any other thing. And on the continental level or at the national level, I'm happy to inform you that the African Union has the African Water Vision 2025, which looks at equitable and sustainable use of water for socio-economic development. So now all development in Africa that is supported by the African Union and then African Union member states, there is the need to have the water vision attached to it. And this is very critical because just yesterday, the African Union launched the Water Investment Fund. So now countries can apply for these funds to develop their water sector. So these are marvelous steps being taken, but I will not want us to look at these higher steps because it's going to take a long time to get to it.
Exactly.
But at our individual level,
we can play.
Even in a radio station, when to flush the toilet, when to use the washroom. All these simple practices will go a long way to save our water and to make it accessible to
Brilliant. Thank you very much. But before I let you go, I mean, you've made a very, very, interesting submissions, very educating, and especially, to the individuals, because when, an individual talks about water, he talks about they don't give us water. The water suppliers are not giving us water, forgetting the fact that you, the consumer, also, play a major role in the usage of water and further looking at how to conserve water. But then I have my colleagues right here. I believe they have some questions for you, so we'll take I believe Hafiz has Epi says no, but let's hear Hafiz. Hafiz has one question for you, so we can wrap it up right here. Hafiz.
Mr. Antwi, thank you very much for joining us. You've enlightened us a lot. But quickly, I just want to understand what it is like in terms of private participation in the water distribution chain. I mean, some have often had issues with the public sector controlling things and thinking that they are largely inefficient in the distribution. But others have also expressed worry that since the private persons are profit-driven, if you find them in the sector, then it might actually affect the poor and vulnerable in the system. What do you make of that?
Yes, Hafiz, thank you. So, water as an economic good or as a social good is a huge debate. So, in 1992, we called something the Dublin Principle. And I'm happy to say because I'm also based in Ireland. So, this principle were developed in Ireland, Dublin, which is the capital. So, they had 4 principles, and the argument came that they were going to look at water as an economic good. So in countries, they believe that if you leave water in the hands of private people, they are going to economize it and make money out of it. Yeah. And if you leave it in the hands of government, there's going to be a social good. So the government is going to make it accessible. But the challenge and the reality on the ground now is government alone cannot make water accessible to citizens or to the population. It needs a strong support of private hands. So what we need to do now is to have measures and structures in place. So when these private people come into the water supply chain, they will not exploit the system but they'll rather contribute their knowledge and expertise. So another example I can give in Ghana, we have private companies that are into borehole drilling. So that is a beautiful concept. So government can partner with various district assemblies and say, in this district, if you have a private person with the capacity to drill boreholes, let a person go ahead, do it. You spread payment over a period of time. With that, individuals can drill boreholes 10 or 20 each year in the community. But if we are going to wait for government to now come and have a plant and all come and district assemblies to get their internal fund to now go and drill these boreholes, it's going to take a long time. So as a policymaker, I always advocate for the fact that we need to encourage private people to come in. But their coming in should be tailored towards some certain laws and legislation and policies in place so that we don't have the usual private sector manipulation and exploitation that happens in other sectors. So to me, what I say is we can't discourage them from coming. We need to encourage them. But just like you come to the radio station, you need to do your post-production. People in the private sector should do their own production, or they should be guided by some laws and regulation before they are allowed into the system. And with that, we can have access to everyone based on where you are.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Antwi, for joining us on the Africa Daily Show. We will certainly reach out for more conversations. I mean, this was very enlightening and fruitful. Very, very, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time and effort. Okay, that was the man all the way from the Republic of Ireland, Sarpong Hammond Antwi, a PhD student at the Dundalk Institute of Technology. We'll be right back, as I will be bringing on board my colleagues so we can have our in-house discussions right here.
Where we they go, where we they go. What's up, it's Trigmatic, and you're on Africa Global Radio. Our story, our growth, our future. Check out www.africaglobalradio.com, where Africa lives. We're telling you the African story.
Okay, the show is Africa Daily on Africa Global Radio, and I am Barry Musa. We are about to delve into our own in-house discussion, and it is the discussion zone. We just spoke to Sarpong Hammond Antwi from the Republic of Ireland, and he talked extensively about water challenges and solutions, and what are the things that they have been doing to ensure that everybody at least has access, gets access to, quality, portable drinking water, and of course, what we as individuals need to do to conserve water. Guys,
Barry,
how are you?
we're doing great.
Great. I think I really enjoyed the interaction with Hammond.
Yeah.
And he made some key points in there about water that sometimes we don't even know. Charlie, you are home consumer. You actually also part of the problem because you get it 24/7. Someone somewhere is not getting it because of the way you misuse it. It's actually preventing others, from also getting this, rights and all of that. But then today's World Water Day. Let's hear from you guys. Let me start with you, Hafiz.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mr. Hammond has really, opened up the discussion. He's touched on a lot. It's a shame we couldn't get him to.
Time constraint, I guess.
Yes, the extensive knowledge on water is quite refreshing and very exciting to listen to. Because, first off, discussing issues of water hasn't always been the easiest of conversations to be had.
Really? Why?
Yeah, because look, a simple Google search you do, and you don't exactly see the prettiest picture of Africa being painted out there. It doesn't paint a pretty good picture, and he just ends up leaving the Southeast in the map. So how he managed to actually get a lot of attention in there, it's interesting to see.
Very.
It's an exciting thing to listen to. Looking at all the challenges or listening to all the challenges, you don't think this is the same continent we are talking about. So many rivers like the River Nile, Congo, Lake Victoria, and all that. And so some of these challenges, and you listen to them, you're like, what exactly is going on? But I'm glad he could clarify a lot of the things there. Fantastic delivery there. And just a few I would like to, add to what he's told us so far. Now, of course, he mentioned natural and human factors. Yes, and he went extensively. And then natural factors is just simply because it was the weather. But with the human factors, it seems there are a lot of factors in there that he talks about governance, talks about pollution and all that. And also a lack of investment, which I touched on especially, which I wanted to find out what exactly
the private sector
players, why we are not seeing that so much. Because in places like Kenya in 2002, they enacted certain laws, like he put it, because when you invite private players into such a sensitive space, private players are out there to make money. So if you don't put them in check, it's more like these rules he kept hammering on is something of a leash. You know, when you have a dog, you need to put him on a leash to control him. Exactly. So it acts as a leash to control their activities, so that you don't have them exploiting, aggravating an already bad situation in there. Because I mean, in the 90s, in my readings, I came across where they talked about certain African countries that try to lure foreign investment into the sector.
Okay.
Some had to go as far as offering tax holidays, and some even offered investors to, to repatriate full profits, and they still said no to investing in the sector, especially in Africa.
Right.
And they would rather invest in places like Asia and Latin America. So that says that's a huge indictment, and it says a lot about the sector. Of course, he went on to mention issues of settlements and all, and how and you see the thing with settlements is that when you look at issues on water, it's not a one size fits all approach.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted. Okay, say the problem in Kenya when it comes to water might not exactly
be the
same problem in Ghana.
In Ghana, right.
So each problem has to be tailored to the unique
unique solutions
or solutions to the people.
Yeah.
So you need to find that balance, because you see, with settlements, even when you are supplying water, especially in the urban centers, what would happen is that you only end up supplying waters to planned settlements. How about the unplanned ones?
Yeah, that's true.
So even when you improve it, of course, there are still certain individuals that will be left out, and that's where he was mentioning, the fact that in some areas you find someone washing his car and doing all the stuff with clean water.
With the clean water, someone in the rural areas would consider,
wouldn't have. So yes, and I'm glad he mentioned harvesting rainwater as well. And it's something I think, especially in this part of our country, the southern part of Ghana.
Well.
Yes,
we're doing well
because in the architecture you can see some.
It's been designed, and directed to, a container and what have you. Yeah.
So we see some of these things anyway. But the interesting part, especially with privates, lastly, he mentioned boreholes. Now, boreholes, for me, the problem I have with boreholes is with the maintenance. Because, yes, usually when you create boreholes for the rural folks, some of them they will still have to maintain getting the technical personnel, and not just the technical personnel, but the contributions,
the affordability to get that maintained is another issue
to maintain them, because a lot of the time you put this structure 1 or 2 years down the line and it's no longer in use, because even when there's some form of contribution to be made to fix these boreholes, there are still certain people in there, the neediest of the needy, that won't even
be able to
afford. So I read something in Rwanda where even in such situations they would allow such persons to access water for free, even amongst the rural folks.
Wow.
So these are all.
Is that bad sometimes?
Yes, it's that bad.
Right.
So these are always we are seeing water distribution on the continent.
But I think so far so good. So far so good. I mean, with respect to how it's been handled, distributed, and the solutions that are being put in place to tackle these issues. I mean, talk about even Northern Africa, as he made mention of.
He talked about Ethiopia.
The building of the dam and what have you. Very very insightful there. Let me bring in Epi so we can hear from her as well. World Water Day. How many times do you take your bath a day?
Twice.
When you're home? Twice?
Yeah.
Really?
Are you sure?
Don't be economical, the truth.
Wait, how many times am I supposed to take?
She's really economical.
What's the average? What's the average actually? What's the average?
No.
What's the average? What's the average?
Morning and then evening. That's what I do. What's the average of what? The number of times a person
You're supposed to take your
I
bath.
mean, it depends on the person. I take a bath once.
Huh? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Right.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
depends on the person.
Okay. And where you're living. Because in my house, once is not the go-to.
I mean, that's why there's ablution.
No, ablution is totally different from
No, no, no. I'm not talking
bathing.
about you. You know, we have ablution,
Which is the
where
ablution
you
ablution?
wash the vital parts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Is that ablution?
We call it ablution. We used to call it ablution.
You
in
borrowed that
Christian
name.
terms.
Because that's not ablution.
Yeah, I know, but
Okay.
I mean, and
Oh, you
sometimes
have
we call
that
it
one.
polish on debt.
Sometimes that's when the weather is extremely cold, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, Epi, land.
So, I think it's good. Hammond has actually been very enlightening with what he said.
Yeah.
One key thing, though, for me is the fact that we watching how we use water. You know, sometimes you open the tap and you leave it running.
Yeah.
You don't have a container to actually fetch necessarily the amount of water you need,
Mm.
and you don't check. You allow children to just use water anyhow. You
Yeah.
also misuse the water,
Mm.
and it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I feel we have a lot of, seas, rivers,
Water
lakes,
bodies.
water bodies around certain places.
Mm.
One key thing I believe for setting neighborhoods or areas that have a problem with water,
Right.
if a treatment plant actually set in place to treat and channel some of the water there, it can be distributed and
Within that-
redirected within the community to serve them.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily have to go and fetch on clean water
Mm.
and use it for everything. Now
Right.
that will also cut short on the lack of water or the shortage of water and solve water issues in those areas, because there are certain people who have to travel miles and miles, like you were saying. It's a big issue. Something I studied, I think 2 years ago. I realized that half of the time, most young ladies and women, and even in some certain cases you have boys,
Yeah.
children, spend most of their years. If you calculate the times they actually go to places to go fetch water and come, if you calculate that over time, like they spend like a number of years just fetching water, getting water,
Right.
just to keep the home running. And this, like you mentioned, affects the academics. It affects time, it affects development.
And you know the interesting part, this is not actually now more peculiar to rural areas. Even in the urban centers, we see them every day.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Every day.
when there's been water shortage and stuff, and you have to go, and if you don't have a polytank and a groundwater supply, a manhole, something, if you don't have any of those things, it becomes a problem when the tap is not flowing. So then you have to find ways. You have to actually cut time out of progressive work to go get water for your needs. Now, if the proper structures and systems, because management is very key.
Yeah.
Management is super key for me. It's very key. I feel that here in our base Ghana, because this is where I've actually experienced some of the water issues as compared to other places. But if the systems are put in place and set to work, it will work. I've seen industries that have set themselves up by water bodies.
Right.
They have channeled the water, treated the seawater, and they're actually distributing it within their plants, within their industries, and it's working very well for them.
Right.
And these are foreign companies. But then you have local or homemade companies, and it's like we're trying to just get a link to the direct source. If we can't directly link them to the pipe water, why don't we start creating some? And one of this thing was, I think, Teshi Nungwa about, they used to have a lot of issues with water. 3-4 years back, they had terrible issues with water. Water was like, it was like a plague for them because, I mean, going distance, as long as when they close the tap, weeks on end, there's no water
There's
flowing.
no water.
Yeah, so one thing then, they actually, government and some other companies came, they tried to actually work on the seawater,
Yeah.
treat it so that people could have water. And for the time it was working, I've not really done updates lately, but for the time it was working 2-3 years ago, that people were happy. They could open the tap and then water was flowing. They were excited. So I believe if we have the right systems working, and checks and balances is very important. You put a certain company in charge of something, you don't just leave them ungoverned. You have to actually know that, okay, we're checking this. Procurement is key in this whole process. What are you procuring? Where are you procuring from? Who are you actually going to for all these things? I think all these things are things we have to actually check and start engaging properly, because waste of water
Okay.
here is causing a lot of problems.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Epi, for your submission right there. Waste is very too much. Let's reduce it. Mommy?
Hey.
Yeah. Water. You said you take it about once a day?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Okay. That's
That's
good.
because, I don't know if you heard it, but they said if you're dark skinned and then you bath too much, your color will fade.
Feed. To
Yeah.
what? Like no, to what? I'm lost here.
Don't you have a black shirt?
A black what?
Do you have a black shirt?
That's
No.
that's a different thing.
Wait.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a black shirt?
I do have a black shirt.
If you wear it and then you wash it continuously,
That's
doesn't
wool.
it fade?
That's a material.
Does it not fade?
That's your comparison is totally obsolete. Like it's not something.
I think
It doesn't
the fate of the black shirt will be determined on the detergent you're
You're
using.
using
and the
to
amount of
wash.
exposure to the sun.
No,
you
even if
give
you're not
it.
using a bleaching kind of detergent, you wash it continuously.
maybe
Too
the
much,
sun
it fades.
exposure also
Exactly.
would count on the
your
color.
But anyway,
problems?
No, the fading of your body,
I
your skin
heard it
color,
somewhere.
and you believe it.
And I have inculcated it into my
So
daily life.
that is very interesting. We'll have that conversation later on. But anyway, real quick on water, World Water Day today. Yeah.
So the theme for this year's celebration is valuing water. And I mean, Hammond spoke a lot.
Yep.
Epi has said a lot. Hafiz has said a lot. And in valuing water, I mean, it goes into our daily activities.
Absolutely.
In as much as we are talking about what government can do and putting in place systems and checks, I think it should start from us. It should start with us.
Oh yeah.
Because there's a proverb that says charity begins at
Uh-huh.
home. So if we are going to value water, we should look at the things that we do. What is the amount of time you use under the shower? Are you recycling water? And I know even when you use
Reusing
WCs,
water.
when you use WCs, right, they usually have two buttons. One is for like a slides flush, and then one is for like a heavy flush.
But not everybody has that.
But I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay.
It's for 1 and 2.
For 1 and 2.
Yeah, so for
Right.
those who do not know,
Thank you for breaking it down.
I
1
was
and 2.
getting to that.
All right,
So
continue.
for those who do not know, you use the light flash for when you pee, and then you use the heavy one for when you do the two.
Yeah.
So I think we should know that, and then we should try to use it, because the world is running out of water because we are wasting the water we have.
We just want water to just come out of it. So
We always complaining and it never rains and taps are not flowing. I mean, sometimes here in our base Ghana,
yeah.
the dams, there's so much water in the dams, they have to open it for some to pass. And I think that is a bad thing. I think what we can do is find a way to use the excess water. Because sometimes they give information. They're like, oh, we're opening the dam. If you live in this areas,
The Bagwe from Burkina Faso, huh?
If you live in these areas, even the Wager Dam.
Yeah, the Wager Dam here
If you
nowadays,
live in
right?
these areas, if you live these areas, evacuate.
Yeah. I mean, we've
'Cause-
seen it recently. I
'cause
think
we're
every
opening
year
the
we
dam.
see that with the
So I
Bagwe Dam.
think we should find a way to use the excess water instead of just opening the dam for the water to go to
Yeah,
waste.
just spilling water every year and that's it.
Because like Hammond said, right now we are seeing changes in the weather and the rainfall patterns. Have
Oh
changed.
yeah.
I
Oh
remember,
yeah.
like you said, I remember a time when I was in SHS where it could rain all day.
Sometimes when it rains back in the days, it's
But
just
these
a
days
joyful
it
day for
rains.
us.
Sometimes these days even the clouds gather and they are so dark and
Nothing happens.
Speaking of the rain, I think it's one of his points on the natural factors.
Yes. Yes.
We can, I mean, thanks to the fact that we cut down a lot of our trees, we are seeing some of these things.
Oh
But
yeah.
then, according to the Forestry Commission, that over 91% of trees cut down here in our base Ghana are used for what? Firewood. Now, and speaking of wait, now let's talk about firewood.
Yeah.
Now the interesting thing about I chanced on this thing about LPG and firewood and everything they use.
Yeah.
And it was said that look, a lot of the rural folks that prefer firewood will tell you that food cooked with firewood or
It's more
it tastes better than
palatable.
food cooked
That's a myth, eh?
I don't know. It goes in the same vein as those that say they would rather prefer the pepper
The one
you
the
grind
one
on the
grinded
stone.
on the
Exactly.
with a blender.
Exactly. The one you are getting with a blender.
Yeah.
And I don't know the scientific basis if indeed.
But that one, it
I
seems
don't know
there's some
if there's
truth to
actually-
that.
There's actually some truth to
I
some
think
of
there's
these
some
things.
truth to
Anyway.
that. I don't know.
the pepper grind.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a conversation we can have after the show.
Yeah.
How about the firewood thingy?
We use gas in the house. And if the food will be nice, the food will
It will be nice.
No,
If it's bad, it's bad.
But that's
Charlie.
the
Have
food
it.
with firewood comes with some.
Have it.
I
Behave yourself.
don't think I've eaten food cooked with firewood in a while. Even if I have, I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't even know
So
exactly. You
I
can't tell the
think whether
difference.
the food will be nice or
It's
not.
about whoever is
depends on
preparing
who's
it.
cooking
Yeah,
it
if you're
and
good,
what
you're
they're
good. If you're not,
using.
you're not.
It has a smoky feel.
It's fine, Hafiz. Behave. Mommy, land for
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, I've landed.
You have landed.
I mean, I'm just saying we should look at the things we should check our activities
Okay.
that we're hoping to conserve
Yeah,
water and
yeah.
value water.
Okay, thank you very much, guys, for sharing your thoughts as well. And of course, for those of us listeners out there, thank you very much for